Jesus was born without sin. He was able to save us from the uttermost and give us salvation. My brothers and sisters, when you make room for Jesus, he'll give you peace. Have a little witness. When you make room for Jesus, he'll give you joy. When you make room for Jesus, he'll give you love. And I wonder this morning, is there anybody here wanna make room for him? When you make room for him, he'll give you mercy. When you make room for him, he'll give you the victory. But when you make room, don't just make room because of December the 25th. But every day of your life, every month, you ought to have some room for the master. On Monday, you ought to make room. On Tuesday, you ought to make room. On Wednesday, you ought to make room. I'm out of here, y'all. On Thursday, you ought